key message: Gemini 3 is out now. Opus 4.5 is out now. GPT 5.1. Yeah, I mean, basically every major lab out there has put out a new state-of-the-art model. And I think Opus 4.5, in my opinion, is the best coding model out there. Especially with Opus 4.5, it's actually using its tools in a lot more efficient manner. And the updated Cloud Code too.
And there's nothing in the current architecture of models that there's no path to AGI for the current architecture of models.
Working on a product, right? We're just doing research because we believe that the current architecture that's powering all of these models, the underlying transformer architecture, is not is kind of saturated. It's like SEO 2.0, right? LLM Engine Optimization. We discussed this in one of our earlier podcasts too, but I think it makes more and more sense for you as a business that's looking to be featured in more results, actively start optimizing for LLM. Welcome back to the Silicon Diet. This is episode 3. We're back after a couple of weeks.
And that means we have a lot of information to share with you. A lot has happened in the AI world.
I mean, it's I feel like pace of progress is just picking up.
Mm-hmm.
We're going into the holiday season. OpenAI is going to do their 10-15 days of Christmas all over again like last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, even going into the Thanksgiving break, man, so many new announcements. A lot of new models. Benchmarks being broken pretty much once every 2 days.
A lot of Black Friday deals on so many subscriptions.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think key message: Gemini 3 is out now. Opus 4.5 is out now. GPT 5.1 is out now in its various flavors. But
5.1 Codex Max, 5.1 Pro, and also Anthropic's Opus 4.5 models out now.
yeah, I mean, basically every major lab out there has put out a new state-of-the-art model. There's a new Nano Banana Pro. But yeah, pretty much what we're seeing is the frontiers are being pushed again, and especially with the special emphasis on coding, right? GPT 5.1 Codex Max, it broke the benchmark of several benchmarks, and the key message there was that it's able to code for long-running tasks a lot better. Right. I think OpenAI said they got it to run for a couple of days on a few tasks. I personally haven't been able to get it to run a couple of days, but a few hours perhaps. Adi, what about you?
I mean, these models are incredible. Like, I could just tell that every time a new model comes out, it's just a leap forward from the previous models in terms of like a vibe coding perspective. But it's almost like all these frontier labs, they just have some model in their back pocket and they're just waiting for someone to like release their new model so that they could say, my thing is bigger than yours.
Yeah.
Got you.
No, so I think that was the funny part, right? There was a lot of buzz on Twitter when Gemini 3 came out, and a bunch of people from the OpenAI employees kind of retweeted saying, yo, great job. This is great, congratulations, etc., etc. And a bunch of people were kind of reading into it too much and were like, these guys definitely have something in their back pocket right now.
If they're saying all that stuff, saying great job, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Gemini 3 got the spotlight for 2 days or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, all things considered, it's a great model, right?
All of them are great models.
All of them are great models, exactly. And I think Opus 4.5, in my opinion, is the best coding model out there by far, right? For the first time, it's like you're actually seeing repeatable outcomes by using the models. And what I mean by that is there were a lot of, weird, quirky situations that you ran into with these coding models in the past, wherein, sometimes it would run a couple of tests, those tests would fail, but then the model would say, great, all tests have passed, now I'm going to continue. Right? I personally have seen that multiple times. Obviously, some of this can be solved using custom rules, but for a frontier model now, especially with Opus 4.5, it's actually using its tools in a lot more efficient manner. And the updated Cloud Code do, right, to tap into the power of tool use with Opus 4.5. And you can actually see a noticeable difference in the quality of code that's coming out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So with these new MCPs, it's basically improving the context efficiency of your calls, right?
So not really with the MCPs, but more with, again, I think that's something that Anthropic released earlier too, right? Which is their tool search tool, right? And again, a very exhaustive engineering guide with regards to how can you make your MCPs more efficient? How can you cater them better to Opus 4.5 and tap into its potential? Because again, reportedly, Opus 4.5 is a leap forward in terms of computer use, right? Which unlocks a whole new type of application that can be built on top of Opus.
Brings up like an interesting question. So all these models are building their own kind of proprietary MCPs. You could consider the tool calling tool as like an MCP. And it's only locked to Anthropic. Same thing with Gemini. They have their file search API only for Gemini models. There's nothing to like really integrate all these or use these latest technologies that's not vendor locked.
I mean, that's again, there's for each of these tools that exist as a part of one of these proprietary offerings, there is a third party tool that kind of unifies it all, right? I mean, file search, for example, you can utilize a vector database externally and it basically does the exact same thing, right? But I think the key aspect here is labs are doing a much better job of explaining how to leverage these models. And you know, again, you can see the model specs that they release. These are getting more and more exhaustive with every subsequent model release, because the amount of research they're doing in identifying the behavior of these models is so important for people building on top of them, because they know how to prompt them better and what behavior to kind of expect from each of these models too. But I think that directly ties into, you know, how much longer are we going to see exponential improvements in the quality of model outputs just by scaling compute, right? Because I think where a lot of improvement in accuracy is being unlocked right now is with regards to post training, right? Because again, they're throwing more compute at it. They're spending more time on identifying the behavior of each of these models. But I think what Ilya actually brought up in his podcast with Barkesh recently is that for how long are these scaling laws going to continue, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that podcast was really good, actually, from both sides. Ilya was talking about how his firm, SSI, was focusing on research and how research will take these models to the next level. And there's nothing in the current architecture of models there's no path to AGI for the current architecture of models.
Yeah.
And Dwarkesh was asking a lot of solid questions, like, so you only got $2 million. $2 billion. How do you think you're going to compete with OpenAI? It's a very valid question. And Ilya was just spitting out super valid answers. It all made sense.
I think it's a drastically different perspective to what we've been hearing from Sam Altman or some of these other larger labs who are definitely pouring more and more money into compute. And their argument's always been compute can't really, more compute is never going to impact us, right? It's only going to benefit us. And I think Nadella also kind of echoed similar statements. But with coming back to Ilya, I think it was his first major, podcast in a very long time. So I think people were really interested to know what it is that SSI is doing right now. And what he clearly came out and said is, we are not working on a product, right? We're just doing research because we believe that the current architecture that's powering all of these models, the underlying transformer architecture, is not is kind of saturated, right? I mean, he came out after the podcast and said, in no way do I mean that more compute is not going to help us. Models are definitely going to keep getting better in the current using the current approach, but there is potentially a better way to unlock intelligence. And he came at it from a very first principles point of view, right? What defines smartness, right? Does AGI mean the model knows everything? Or does AGI mean the model can learn anything? Right? Because that's, I think, the underlying difference is what Ilya seems to think is that he wants AGI to be like a 15-year-old kid who's insanely smart, right? And I think one of the interesting things he brought up in the podcast is if you were to look at a human who kind of has their emotional centers harmed, right, as a part like in their brains, they might be really good at problem solving, but there's a lot of things that human will not actually be able to do, right? And he's kind of drawing a parallel to the AI world, saying we're too focused on learning existing things and kind of training on top of it, but maybe the real unlock is somewhere else. Maybe something like unlocking emotion within models, which would potentially help you take better decisions and learn faster. But interesting perspective for sure.
Yeah, it was a great podcast. One thing that I definitely kind of understood from watching that podcast is there are so many avenues to conduct research and to improve these models.
Yeah.
We're just touching the surface.
Yeah.
You could look at emotion, look at neuroscience. There are so many areas in like the modern sciences where you could explore on how to improve these models. And coming back to the point of why he's not building a product, I think it's pretty smart from his perspective if he believes that research is the fundamental bottleneck to achieving AGI. If you do end up building a product like Anthropic or OpenAI, you'll just waste all this compute on inference versus actually focusing on how to reach AGI. But there are two sides of the coin. If you build a product, maybe you could get much better insights from consumers and how people are interacting with these models to further improve the models to reach AGI.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think his key point was coming from the manner in which these models are trained today, right? The value function is purely optimized to, being right, right? There's always a right answer or a wrong answer. And that's kind of what's feeding most of these RLHF loops, right? If I generate a response to a given query, the AI is kind of trained to pick one response over the other. But it's not necessarily that blunt, right? Human-like, value-driven decision-making is what Ilya wants to emulate, which makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure a lot of the labs are working towards something like this. I don't necessarily fully agree with his point where, we're just going to spend all the $2 billion on doing research and the business will kind of figure itself out. I mean, look at OpenAI, right? It's been 3 years since the launch of ChatGPT. They're doing insanely well, but they're still at about $18 billion revenue, right? Ilya is already valued at $30 billion. So he's just assuming that the amount of time it took OpenAI to go from the launch of ChatGPT to $18 billion in revenue was 3 years, which in itself was, I'm sure, insanely hard, even though they had a great product.
Yeah.
Right? So I still think valuations are kind of a little bit berserk right now. Um, $30 billion, no product, no revenue to show for it. I don't know if that makes complete
There's a
sense.
product.
What is
Ilya's brain. That's the product.
Yeah, I guess we'll really have to see if that brain is worth 30 bill.
I mean, at this point, it's so early in this AI race that we can't really determine who's going to win and who's not going to win. At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what
Moving from
happens.
companies that don't have products to companies that actually sell tangible products that you can hold in your hand. Let's talk about my poker face.
Okay, yeah. I guess that's a decent segue to what we have to talk about next. So I've been selling my cards on Etsy. I just made a 2 or 3 listings on Etsy, thinking that I could just try to get customers or like funnel people from different places to my Etsy page. But just organically, after I launched my product, I've been getting so many sales. I've been getting like a 5% conversion rate. Whatever Etsy's algorithm is, it's insane. And now I'm wondering, how good is the Google algorithm? How good is the Meta algorithm? I need to explore these more. But if you ever want to, sell any physical products or sell some stuff online, get on Etsy, start making ads on Meta too. I'm assuming that Meta's algorithm is as fire as Etsy. So this is like the next step that I'm going to do for selling the cards. If anyone has any tips, let me know.
But what are you doing anything to kind of optimize for these Chat GPT shopping assistants, Perplexity shopping assistants, any of these AI related tools?
I mean, I'm not doing anything specific. I think the algorithm is so cracked that it's just displaying the, you know, displaying it to my exact customer base, the person
On
who would
Etsy
buy
though,
the
right?
product on Etsy. Uh, but yeah, it opens a question of the future of shopping for sure. Like, okay, these algorithms got so good, but they're based on scrolling, scrolling through inventory, scrolling through catalogs. Is that going to be the status quo still? Or is the next generation going to adopt a different way of shopping?
Yeah, I that's a great question. I think it's more of I think both of them will exist in parallel. Because look at it, right? A lot of ads today are targeted ads,
Yeah.
which you're getting on these third party platforms that you're using, Instagram. ChatGPT actually just incorporated ads. I think I was looking at a couple of tweets where people were talking about trying to get more fit, and ChatGPT said, "Hey, why don't you check out Peloton?"
Oh,
I think they're still A/B testing it based off of what I read, but that I think that aspect of advertising is more, we target the places where users are, right? Versus when if I'm on Etsy, I know I'm looking for something to buy. So the algorithm there is more of, okay, here's something on Etsy that you might like. So it's more of the intent is very clear. I'm looking to buy something on Etsy. And now how do I satisfy that intent? Versus when you're using something like a ChatGPT shopping assistant, it's more of the intent itself is where ChatGPT is kind of assisting a lot.
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's helpful for both the company and the consumer. Why do you need inefficiencies to find the product that you're looking for? I mean, it does bring up a question of trust. Do I trust ChatGPT to give me the right product, the exact product I need? It does have so much more information about me just through my chat history and knowledge about what I'm researching about. And because people nowadays, I barely use Google anymore. I just use ChatGPT basically. um, but specifically for shopping, it brings up another whole question. So those of you who don't know, I'm working on this thing called Model Me. Use modelme.com. Shout out. But me and my uh, co-founder, like the person I'm working with to build this, we were just discussing about the new shopping assistant feature. So ChatGPT has a shopping assistant feature, as well as Perplexity. Have you seen those?
I have. Yeah, very interesting experiences, but I didn't necessarily like them as much.
Yeah, it might be, gimmicky to us, but we're like the boomers.
Yeah.
Um, so I was thinking about this a lot. Like when let's say you're shopping through um, a luxury brand's catalog. A lot of items in that catalog, even though you're never going to buy them, they speak to the brand. They add to the brand's value, creativity, the feeling of the brand when you wear it. There's so much nuance to just online shopping in general. I know the boomers would say, I'm never going to shop online. I like going in store. The next generation, the Gen Z version of the boomers would be, I only like online shopping and scrolling through uh, Etsy or scrolling through like H&M, Zara, all these stores and buying clothes, versus the new generation, they're going to be shopping on a whole different uh, paradigm through just chat, text, or visual references.
See, I think again it ties back to intent, right? There's so many levels at which advertising or shopping, for example, might be impacted, right? Few people know exactly what they want at which point in time. Like, it depends on how narrow you can take your want to, right? If I know I'm looking for a hoodie versus if I know I'm looking for a Nike hoodie, the set of things I'd be looking for are very different, right? When compared to just in general, if I'm looking for clothes, right? In that case, the variety is a lot broader, and potentially the algorithm has a lot more influence over what I end up getting versus if I'm just looking for a Nike hoodie.
Yep. Yep.
And what the shopping assistant is helping consumers do is, if my want is still pretty broad, it will more often than not surface things that are more relevant to me, or things that I'm more likely to like because the model understands me, because I've interacted with the model so much more.
100%. But what does that mean for the brand's perspective? Now, let's say you're a clothing brand owner. Now you have to release content to directly target the persona that you're going for. Let's say you're like an alt rock punk band or band attire type brand. How are you going to convey that so that the LLM understands, so it can match to the appropriate user? Now there's a
Yeah.
whole new paradigm of
Optimization.
shopping. Yeah.
Yeah. It's again, it's like SEO 2.0, right? LLM engine optimization. We discussed this in one of our earlier podcasts too, but I think it makes more and more sense for you as a business that's looking to be featured in more results, actively start optimizing for LLMs. And there's a variety of ways to do this. But yeah, I think it is a very important consideration that you should keep in mind now. And I think, with Use Model Me, with My Poker Face, you're probably going to see significantly more visits to the actual site once you start optimizing for these things.
So visits in terms of
With the UTM source being like a Chat GPT or a Perplexity or something else.
yeah, it's scary times for these brands.
It is. I mean, it's embracing a whole different form factor now, right? Which is, people are interacting with a whole different set of tools in their day-to-day life. Like before, it used to be Google. Now it's ChatGPT, and I think the key point here is, people used to interact with a lot more tools in the past. I think the set of tools they're interacting with is coming down, and it's just their ChatGPT interacting with a bunch of external tools to achieve the same outcomes that the human otherwise would have used a different tool for.
Yeah.
But that really brings us to, yeah, humans are using a lot less tools, but it's getting increasingly important to supply the LLMs with the right set of tools, right? Because again, what we're seeing with these new models is that they're getting a lot better at tool use, a lot better at tool calling. But you're seeing some of the drawbacks with tools with MCPs come up, which is now if I want to integrate like 1,000 tools with a Claude, it's going to cause a lot of context rot, right? If I'm using up 20% of my context just using tool definitions, I'm not going to see the best outcomes. And Anthropic released a great engineering blog about this again, which is they actually enabled their tool search tool, which enables you to load as many tools as you want. And Opus is actually going to query your tool registry to find the relevant set of tools.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not feeding your LLM with that unnecessary context all the time. It's able to search for the right context that it needs. And again, tying back to the entire concept of context engineering, right? A lot of other great tool sets are coming out. You know, one of them is by GitHub's old co-founder, and Case launched a product called Kit, which is an open source tool infrastructure which you can just plug into any large language model, and now your model is going to have the ability to do code gen, right? It comes with its own way to parse files. It comes with its own way to read files. Essentially, all the tool sets that are powering a lot of Claude Code, powering a lot of Codex, it gives you access to that harness, and it's completely open source, which is in my opinion great, and it really enables a whole new set of applications to be built, and it makes it a lot easier to build those applications.
Absolutely. Yeah, these are so cool. I mean, I think these tools and kits and all these like second layer infrastructure on top of these LLMs are just making it so much more useful for businesses, companies, people alike. Like, it's going to proliferate through to the common people just because of these tools. So
but I think anything else you wanted to touch upon?
Coming back to the shopping part of these LLMs, I had a crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
You could just ask the LLM, based on what you think I identify as or how I identify, create a fire looking t-shirt for me, and it could go and buy it for you, basically, like using a print on demand shirt company. Just make a shirt and give it to you. Wouldn't that be so cool?
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Random thought, but
yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to include?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah, we covered a lot, and I think there's always so much more happening. I think you'll have another episode from us next week. We're going to try to be more consistent with these episodes.
Yep. But yeah, I think big couple of weeks. We're looking forward to the next week. Anything planned for this week? Are you going to any events?
I am going to a hackathon tomorrow.
Nice.
It's a real world based hackathon related to like manufacturing or geospatial stuff.
Nice.
And I'm thinking of building a robot management system. Like, on the factory floor, you could see the location of the robots, see its efficiency, battery, if it needs help or not.
Very cool.
Stuff like that. But
very cool. But my machine learning professor at Georgia Tech had a company that was trying to do something very similar. I wonder how it's doing. But yeah, great. Awesome. All right. I think that's about it for episode 3. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace out.